Alright guys, so we're back with another Discord.js video. So in this video I'm going to show you guys how to create a very simple mute command. So this requires you to configure some stuff with your Discord server because muting is not a native feature that's part of the Discord API. It's more of a concept, okay? The concept is very simple. You have a role that has the send messages permission disabled for the text channels, and you give that role to a user that is to be muted, and once they have that role they should not be able to send messages. So right now I have a brand new server because my other server is a complete mess and I don't feel like fixing it because it's pretty beautiful, so we're gonna leave it alone. I mean, it looks just pretty bad. Okay, anyway, so we have a new server. I have a couple channels. It has no permissions. I'm going to show you guys how to set it up. But again, this is even if you have a current server ready, it should be pretty straightforward. Okay, because all we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and create a couple of roles. So I'm gonna create a bot role. Give that role to my bot. I actually spent the past 11 minutes recording this video and I realized I didn't have my bot on my server, so I had to add it again. I had to re-record it. So member role, and let's give a muted role. The muted role is going to be just a great. The member role is going to be pink, or no, leave it. Okay. We have 3 roles. Let's give our bot the. You want to make sure your bot role. Well, you want to make sure your bot in general has the manage roles permission. You can obviously add other permissions as well, but the most important permission that the bot needs to do the mute is manage roles, because we are adding roles to the user. You want to make sure your muted role doesn't have any permissions. You can honestly leave these permissions alone, and I would say disable these two, course, and you can leave member alone. Okay, the member role is a role that's going to be applied to every single user. Okay, and the reason why I'm creating that is to show you guys that yes, there are some servers that have a dedicated role for everyone. So if you look at my server, you're gonna see that everyone has, like, you know, the universal role that I give to everyone as soon as they join. You know, they have the developer role, for example. They have developer. The bots obviously don't have it because who cares about the bots. Okay, but don't want to say that because the bots are probably going to take over someday. But you know, you guys get the idea. Okay, so that's what we want to give out. Okay, I mean, obviously I don't have it. I should have it, but anyways. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to say is I want to show you guys that the role itself does not conflict with the muted role, and I'll show you guys how to set up the permissions. So once you have these roles set up and you have the role permission set up, you want to make sure you're setting up the channel permissions as well, because channel permissions for text override any role permissions, okay, unless you're an administrator. So unless you have the administrator permission, say. So right now I have a category. It has no permissions. Everything is, you know, vanilla. There's nothing here. And the nice thing about setting permissions for categories is that if you have channels that are synced with the category, you can just simply set the permissions for, you know, the category, and all these channels, their permissions will sync up. So I'll show you what I mean. So right now, if I look at general, okay, you're gonna see that it says permission sync to general. There's nothing here. Same thing with technology, okay, and programming, and off topic. Okay, so watch this. I'm gonna just edit the general category. This is a category. Okay, I'm gonna edit the category, not the channel itself. The category. Okay, well, the category is also channel itself, but you guys get the idea. And I'm going to add the muted role to this permission list, and I'm going to disable everything except for read text channels and see voice channels. And I'm going to disable send messages. I'm going to disable everything but 2 permissions, which is the read message history as well as the one I did earlier. Everything else can be disabled. You can also disable connect, speak, mute, deafen, because obviously if they're muted, I mean, it's up to you, but obviously if they're muted, they shouldn't be able to join voice channels as well. Okay, so that's set. So now you can see that every other channel, or every channel, was synced. Notice how I only added this muted thing to the category, and that synced it up with every single channel, which is pretty freaking awesome. Okay, of course, if you have other categories as well, let's say if I have, you know, a voice channel category, and inside this channel, I'm gonna create channel, say general, And let's just say for the category, we're going to go ahead and just do the same thing for the muted role, disable everything. The reason why, some people might question, why do you want to leave read text channels and see voice channels, as well as the read message history permission enabled? Well, because muting is just kind of like shadow banning, okay? You can still see messages, but you just can't send messages, okay? That's really what muting is. Okay, remember, it's just a concept, okay? Alright, so now that we have the muted permission set, you can see over here, if I add the channel to permissions, it's going to be synced up or muted, just like that. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to my other Discord account. You can see right now I can type freely, right? But if I go ahead, I can join this channel as well. But if I go ahead, and if I just give this guy the muted role manually, right, you're going to see that I can't join this channel anymore. I can't type in any of these channels inside this general category, okay? Alright, so that's pretty straightforward. And even if I give this guy the member role, the universal role, he still should not be able to do anything else, okay? So it doesn't really affect that role too much unless, so here's the thing, unless you have certain permissions set up for members. So let's say, for example, if you go over here, and let's say if you enable send messages, you're going to see that I can actually send messages now, okay? So what you want to do is you want to make sure for your role that is applied to everyone, you want to make sure that this permission is set to this. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm kind of positive that this field itself actually allows other permissions to override it. I'm not 100% sure, but I can kind of just guess. But obviously, I know for a fact that if you select this, that's going to override any permission as well. If you disable this, that will just disable it. That's it. So you want to make sure that you leave the member permissions alone, okay? Because we already gave the muted role to them. Obviously, for members, if you don't want people in general to be, managing messages, you just disable that. Likewise, if you don't want people to just send files in general, just disable that. The muted role, all the muted role needs to do is just take over the send messages permission. So you want to make sure that this is set to this, the gray one. Okay, not X, not check, this in the middle. Okay, and now you're gonna see that I have the member role, but I can't send messages. Okay, because the muted role overrided those permissions, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so now that you guys, now that I showed you guys how this works, let's actually write the code, which is very easy. So I have my bot now. Let's go ahead and give my bots permissions. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give the bot role that has the manage roles permission. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna write a simple command. We're gonna say else if is valid command, and this is just going to check to see if the command is mute user, mute user rather. And what we're going to do first is we're going to check to see if the member itself has permissions. Okay, so we're going to check to see if, we're going to say if message member has permission. We're going to check for 2 permissions, so the easiest way to do that is pass in an array of permission resolvables. So we're going to say they have kick members, if they have ban members. You can check for more if you want, but we're just going to do these 2 for now. Because in the last video for kick user, I just showed you guys how to check for kick members permission. And in the video before that, I showed you guys how to check for only ban members permission. But I want to show you guys how to combine, or how to check for 2 different permissions, okay? I think actually this only checks to see if it has at least one of them. We're gonna double check real quick. I'm gonna just copy this. Okay, so right now, obviously over here, let's just do a simple console log. So let's just console log. Good. Okay, so I'm gonna go on my own account and I'm gonna try to use the mute user command, and this should work. Well, let's just wait for a bot to. Okay, good. Okay, good. Now if I go on my other account, it's gonna say you don't have permission to use that command. Okay, now let's try this real quick. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give let's see, I'm gonna give a moderator role. I'm gonna make a moderator role real quick. So this is also helpful for people who run servers that have a mod role. Let's give this guy the kick members permission. Okay, so if this works, what that means is that at least one of these permissions needs to be present. Okay, and that's not what we want. We want to make sure they have the same permissions. Okay, so obviously that worked, but so you don't have permission to use it. Okay, great. So even though, wait, I didn't even give myself the role. I got excited too quickly. So this should, okay, you don't have permission to use that command. Okay, so our moderator role does have the kick members permission, but it does not have the ban members permission. So yes, I can definitely say 100% that all of these permissions need to be satisfied. Okay, you have to have, the member has to have all of these permissions in the array. If it doesn't, then it's going to return false. Okay, so now we have both permissions for the moderator role. Now if I use this, it's not sending that message now, and it's saying good, which means that good. So if I do that again, it's going to say good again for the fourth time. Perfect. Okay, that's exactly what we wanted to do. Again, I just wanted to do this. You don't have to check both of these permissions. I just wanted to show you guys how to check for all permissions. Okay, obviously I can add more, but I'm just going to leave it like this for now. Okay, now if they do have permissions, what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and just get the ID of the user that we want to mute. And so we're going to go ahead and just say let's member ID equal. So we're going to reference the content property that's going to give us a string, and we're going to call the substring function on that string. Again, if you've watched my previous videos, you'll know exactly what I'm doing. You've probably already guessed it by now. Okay, so we're going to just say inside the substring, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the substring of this entire string itself. We want to get this substring, this part of the entire string, and we want to basically start from the position of the first character of that argument, which is right over here. The easiest way to do that is you can just count the position that it's at. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. I can just pass in 10, and that would give me the substring. But I don't want to. I want to tell you. I want to show you guys that passing in hard-coded values, you shouldn't ever do that. The best thing to do is to always use certain functions, and of course I want to show you guys different ways. And in the past 2 videos I've shown you guys that we can use the index of function on the message.content string, and what this will do is it will return the first occurrence of a substring. It'll return the position of the first occurrence of the substring. Okay, so we're basically trying to search for the first occurrence of a space. Okay, because that's what separates the command name with the argument. Okay, and then we're going to get that position, and we're going to add 1, which is going to give us the position of this first character in the argument, 3. Okay, so this right over here is going to return 9. Okay, because the space is at position 9. We're going to add 1 so that we start at position 10. And if I console log this, you're going to see that this is going to work just fine. Perfect, just like that. Okay, now a couple of things you also do want to check as well is, aside from the permissions, you want to also make sure that, let's say for example, a moderator is trying to use this command. You want to make sure the moderator cannot mute admins or people higher than them. So you also want to check to see if the person that they're trying to mute also doesn't have the same permissions as they do as well. Okay, so for example, if you didn't check this, other moderators would be able to mute other moderators, and that's not good. So what we're going to do next is we're going to get the member by their ID. So we already have the ID already, so we're going to go ahead and say let member equal. We're going to go ahead and get the member by saying message.guild.members.cache, and this cache is the guild member manager object, which is a string. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Guild member manager is the members property. The cache is what's part of that manager, and this is what contains all the members that are part of the current guild that we're referencing. Okay, so this is a collection. The cache is the collection, so we can honestly just call .get, and I can pass in the member ID because collections map IDs to the object. So in this case, the members collection, or the cache in this case, is a collection that maps all the member IDs to the member object. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and now check to see if member is a truthy value. And what that means is, if this actually returned an object, something that isn't undefined, then member itself will be considered a truthy value. If it returned undefined, undefined is a falsy value. Okay, so this basically is another way of saying, okay, if the member actually exists. Okay, so if it does, we're going to go ahead and do one more check. I'm going to say if member has permission, and we're going to check the same permissions. Okay, we're going to go ahead and say kick members and ban members. So if they have the same permissions, okay, we're going to say, hey, you can't do that. You can't mute that person. Else, we're just going to do something like message.channel. So if the member does not exist, we're just going to say member not found. Okay, so before I do anything else, let's go back into this if case, this nested if case. And we're going to go ahead and say, okay, if they have these two permissions, we're going to go ahead and say, hey, you cannot mute that person. Message.channel send, you cannot mute that person. Okay, and if we do that over here, so let's say right now, if I'm trying to mute this guy over here, let's get this guy's ID, user, should say you cannot mute that person. Okay, now obviously I'm an admin, so if I'm an admin, then I should be able to bypass this. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and say this: if member has permission, kick member. So if they have these two permissions and the person that's issuing the command is not an admin, to check for that, we're gonna go ahead and say and negation symbol message dot member has permission administrator. So if we don't have the administrator permission, okay, then we're gonna say you can't mute that person. Obviously you can do other checks too, but again, now if I try this again, you're gonna see that there we go, it doesn't send that message anymore because I'm an admin. Okay, perfect. So if that is true, we're gonna go ahead and just mute the person. So we're gonna give them that role. The bot is gonna have to give that person the role. Here's the one problem though: the bot actually won't be able to give the other user the mute role because the bot is underneath moderator. So obviously what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to get rid of the moderator role, or actually I'm gonna go ahead and move this up here, just for demonstration purposes. And you're gonna see that now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna say member dot roles add, and we're going to pass in the role ID. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and get the ID of the role. To do that, you just go over to roles, right click muted, click copy ID. Make sure you have developer tools enabled. To do that, just go to user settings and just click on developers, and you just click enable it and it'll be set. I just copy the ID of the role, and I'm going to go ahead and say let's say let muted role equal. We're going to go ahead and get the role now. So we're going to say message.guild.roles.cache.get, pass the ID in. And we're going to say if muted role, then we're going to give the member the role. This takes in, you can just pass in the role object. Else, we're going to go ahead and say message.channel.send muted role not found, and we're gonna go ahead and just say, oops, I'm gonna go ahead and say message channel.send user was muted. Okay, so let's try this out now. Let's see. Yep, they were given the role, but obviously since I have I don't have, remember what I said earlier, role channel permissions always bypass role permissions. Okay, so even though this guy has the moderator role, he's still muted on these on general. And the reason why is because I don't have permissions set for moderators. Right? Obviously, if I have the moderator role set, since moderator is above muted, I can just simply save that, and you actually have to override it actually. So I go ahead, whoops, go to moderator, enable that for now. You're gonna see that I'm a moderator, but I can still send messages. But if I get rid of the mod role, I'm officially muted. Okay, great. And of course, unmuting is honestly just the same thing. You just remove the role from them. Okay, and if you guys don't know how to remove roles, just watch my previous video on how to delete roles. I just showed you guys how to do it. It's very easy. But yeah, I don't think I'm gonna make a video on how to unmute them. I mean, I guess I can just do it right now. I mean, we have 20 minutes, so I'll just do it real quick. So it's honestly just the same thing. So we're gonna say is valid command message unmute user, and you're just gonna go ahead and do the same exact thing. You're gonna copy everything here, paste it here, and instead of adding, you're gonna remove the role user was unmuted. The logic kind of pretty much follows the same thing too. if message.member, if they have these two permissions. If they don't have these permissions, then they cannot use the command. You're going to get the ID. You're going to find the member that you want to unmute if the member exists, right? You're going to check to see if that member has these permissions. And you're going to also check to see if the person who's trying to unmute the person is an administrator. So if they're not an admin, then you cannot unmute that person, okay? So I guess this implementation basically says that a moderator cannot unmute another moderator, which makes sense because, you know, if a moderator were to be muted, it would have to be done through an admin, right? So obviously moderators should not be able to override administrators, you know, permissions or mod logs or moderation. I'm sorry, just kind of like buzzing out for a second. And the same thing here, let muted role, you find the role, okay? And notice how I said that you should always avoid using hard-coded values. So yes, I am using a hard-coded value here, but what you should do is you should actually save this value somewhere. Typically in the database, I will have a tutorial later on how to integrate databases, but for now we're going to have to use a hard-coded value because we don't really have a choice. We're checking to see if the role exists, and if it does, I'll remove the role from them and send the rest of stuff. So again, it's really just the same thing, mute user and unmute user. So I'm going to go ahead and just let's unmute the user now. User wasn't muted. Notice how I don't have to mute a role anymore, and that was pretty much. So yeah, again, it's just the same thing. The only difference is that I just changed member.roles.add to member.roles.remove. So literally was just took like 1 minute, but yeah, so hopefully this made some sense. And of course, if you guys have questions, always feel free to ask in the comments or join my Discord server. It's pretty active. We're always growing. We are almost 800 people. Very great place, can't speak, ask questions and about coding and just chill out, okay? So I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.